So recording. All right. Okay. So today we're getting started with the second lesson in React. So we did the components and component state. We're doing the composing React components and passing data via props. So the main thing for this lecture, for this lesson, is that we learn how to compose components and how to pass props through components. So that's the main focus for this lesson. So we're not going to talk about this in detail, but in general, way back in the day when frameworks didn't existed, there was already importing, exporting capability in JavaScript. It didn't exist there, but then they added after I think 2015. And other languages also have this. So like Python and other languages, they have import export. That means you could import a file from another file. You could export a file and then get it from somewhere else. So exporting, importing, that exists in many programming languages. So describe props and how data flow in React. So I'm going to quickly use drawing to kind of explain what props is. Most of you kind of practiced a little bit, so let's explain it. So let's assume this is our main component. So this is app.js, right? This is app.js. Let's say app.js has some state. It has some data. So app.js has some state. Has state. That means state means data. So state means some information that you want to send it to other components. So this is state we want to send down. We want to send down, or we want to send it to other components. So let's say we have another component here. We're going to call it something like let's call it like states, right? It's called like states. And we have a one here, let's call it like cities, right? So we have three components now. We have the app.js, this one, and this one. If we want to use the data, if we want to use the state, we can put it in any of the apps. But the problem is, let's say we put the state in here. So if we put it in when I say state, I mean this is United States. So the states. But this one is the data. Let's just call it data from now on. So there's no confusion. So the data is, let's say we put the data here. Now the problem is in React, you will not be able to send your data to here, to cities. The reason for that is this has to be underneath this. So this has to be underneath here. So it has to go here, right? So that's the only way you could send it. So, and now you will import the cities. You'll import the cities. You'll send it here, and then import it in states, right? And states now knows that cities is a child component of states, right? So that is mainly that's how you want to think of its data when you're passing around it. So you have to always put it in the state, in the component that you want to you want it to be the parent. So now we're going to put our state in here in the app.js, right? So that we can send it to here, we can send it to here, and then if we have other things here, other components, we can send down from here. So we're going to use most of you know this, but we're going to use props to send it the data. Props is a shorten for properties. It's just like so when you have a function. So let's say we have a function here, the function, and you have the name of the function, and then you have the parameters of function, right? So that parameter, you could call it properties if you want, right? You could call it properties. So that's basically what it is. So props is properties. So props you use props to send down the data, and then if you want to send it to other component, you use again props, right? Props is also built in. So one thing about props is that's supposed to be number one. One thing about props is built in React. Built in. So every component by default has props, right? You just have to kind of like put it in your parameter. Another thing about props is number two, props are objects. They're always objects. So you have to pass a key and a value. If you want to pass a prop, you have to pass a key and a value, So that's how you know this is prop. So these are two things about props. Let's see. So yeah, so that's basically what props are, and we can practice inshallah in the lesson. And also we're gonna learn how to compose components. We'll come back for that one. So first, let's actually get started and create a new React file. So to do that, we're gonna go to cd to Gabby, cd to pictures first. cd to Gabby, and then here we're gonna create a folder mkdir. We're gonna call it React. cd React. All right, in here where I'm just gonna create a new React. So I'm gonna say npx create React app. I'm gonna call it component, and then component props. So it's gonna go ahead and create a React file for us, and then we're just gonna open the React. So React is pretty easy to create. All you have to say is just npx create React app, and then give it the name of the app that you're trying to create. All right, so it's finished. So it depends on your computer. So if your computer is fast, it's going to finish faster. cd components and props, and then code dot. So we're just going to open it, and here is our app. We can run a terminal and say npm start, and it's going to start the server for us. So just like that, we have the app already running. All right. So now, so most of you know what, we talked about what all these are all about. Now let's just delete few files so that we have cleaner version. Test. We're going to delete all this test stuff. The logo. Okay. And now in app.js, we have to remove a couple of things. We got to remove all this right here. And in here, we got to remove this. So this is usually what I do when I install a new React. If I don't want to deal with the testing, I just remove them, all of them. And now still our app is broken. The logo, yeah, we have to remove the logo. So right here, instead of logo, we're going to say import React from React, lowercase. That's it. So it should work now. It's not working. Yeah, it's working now. Okay. So now we have two components here. We have this component app.js, which we talked about what it is and all that, and then index.js, which is a way to connect to the browser. So here you're saying documented.get element by ID, and then you're using root, which is also in here. Root is right here, right? So that's how you connect into the DOM. And then app.js is right here, so it's nested inside, and that's how you nest basically components. So let's do a little bit more nesting with components. I'm going to create a basic application. So let me create a file called data.js, I'm gonna put few data in here. Let's add. These are names of lakes in Minnesota. So largest lakes. And then here I'm gonna create a folder called components. So this folder is gonna contain all the components that we create. So there's already a component here, app.js. This is the parent component. And we're gonna put other components here. So let me create one component here for now. Let's call it lakes.js. And it's going to show the list of the lakes that we imported here. Okay. So now, remember we said that if you have data, where do we put the data? If you have data, what is a proper place to put the data if you use in props?
In this state?
In this state, yes. But which component? Should we put it in here in the lakes? So should we import data in lakes or somewhere else?
In lakes, yeah.
Create a new component.
Remember we talked about how we need to pass down. Sorry, goodness. Remember we talked about we need to pass down. Where's my thing? Okay, right here. Remember we talked about we need to pass down data. So this is our data. We put it in app.js, and then whatever other components we have, we need to pass down that data, right? So you always put your data in the topmost app component, I mean, which is app.js, right? So that's how you will treat your data all the time. Okay, so we're gonna put our data here. So we have to create a state, of course. So if you want to manage a data, always you have to create a state for it. So const, let's call it lakes, set lakes, and then use state. And here we're just gonna say data. Let's import that data in here. So there's okay, let's import. I'm just gonna say, okay, so we're just gonna import like this, import. Let's see. So I was just double checking the name of it. Okay, largest lakes from data, right? Largest lakes from data. And now the data here will become the largest lakes. So now our data is in this state, and we have to import use state, right? So all we did now is we took our data, this data, and we imported it in app.js like this. And this is, there's difference between this and this. Who can tell me the difference? If we do that, or if we put curly bracket, what is the difference?
Yeah, I'm trying to see the screen. I don't see it.
My screen?
Yeah. I'm trying to see it.
Do you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, we can see.
You can see, okay. So the difference between this and the other way, which is the curly bracket, is the way that this is imported, exported, right? So the difference is the way it's exported. So if we say export and then just give it a name, this is called a named export, right? So this is called a named export. Let me write there. In the future, if I ask you about it, you can write down somewhere. Named export, right? So named export means you say export and then you give it a name. That's it. But if you say export default, then that's different because you don't need the const. And export default is usually for components. So now if we say export default, then we could export it like this. But it's not a component, it's just the data. So we don't say default. And when you say default, it means you cannot export something else. So once you say default, You cannot say another export here, right? Default means you could only export one thing per file. So in this file, data.js, you could only export this. So if you say export another something else, it will not work. So that's why we don't use export default for data, because we're gonna have other data here. We might have like cities and stuff like that. So it's best to have named export. So named export are exported like this. So if you want to import them, you have to put them around curly bracket. So now we have our data here. Let's console log it. Zakaria, do you see it now?
Oh, yeah. I can see it. I can
Okay.
see it.
Okay, that's good. So we're just gonna console log the state because we want to make sure we have our data. Let's open this right here. And then it's not shown here because we're not rendering anything to the DOM. And as you can see here, it's showing 10 elements, right? So this is our state. Okay, so we have our state. Now all we need to do is we need to pass it to, let me just put this down. Okay, close this. What's that? I don't know why things are not opening now. Okay, so we have our lakes. We need to pass it to this component lakes. So how do we do it? Can someone help me? Get rid of this too. How do we pass this state to lakes component? Who remembers? We need to use something called props to send data to another component, right? So how do you use props to send data to lakes, which is an empty component? We can create RCF. So we just create a basic component. We can just say here h2 lakes. How do we send anything there? You guys remember?
You're gonna go to the JSX file and import the lakes
Okay.
and put
So
it there. As,
in
you're
here
gonna
we're gonna import lakes
Yeah.
component. So it automatically imported because of my editor. And now this is the lakes. We could actually test now and see, like here it says lakes because that's what we wrote. Okay, so now how do we send the data, the lakes to it?
you're gonna put the props. You're gonna see lakes.
Okay,
Right there.
lakes. Yeah. Lakes, okay.
Equals,
Uh-huh.
and then you put the you open the curly braces
Mm-hmm.
and put lakes. Yeah, lakes. Maybe largest lakes.
Largest
Yeah.
lakes. Okay.
I think largest.
I think it's lakes. The
Yeah, the state lakes. Yeah.
Okay.
state. Yeah.
Yep. So every time we want to pass something to the props, we always use the state name, which is now lakes here. The largest lakes is the data from here. So we imported, we gave it to the state. The importance about this is if we want to manipulate the largest lakes, we only manipulate the state. And that's usually a better way to manipulate than manipulating the original data. So if you manipulate this, then you have to do your own cloning. But if you use set lakes and add a new lake to it, then it will automatically make a copy of the current state and then create a new state. So that's why it's important to give everything to the state. Okay, so now what we could do is, so now we sent that data to it. How do we view that data in here?
You're gonna receive the props.
Okay, how do we do that? How do we receive props?
You put their props
in here.
I do, yep.
Yep. Okay,
And
and
then-
we could console log and see what exactly the props is, right? Let's give it a name of something like props. So this is how you pass props. You basically create the component, you import the component like this, and then you give it a whatever name here. You could give it one whatever here. So we could call it like water or something like that, whatever. Doesn't matter what you call it here. You just make sure that when you're trying to use it in lakes component, you know that it's called water, and then this is the data. So this is the data that you're trying to pass, which is the state. So now if we go to our component here, you see that, let's collapse this. Refresh it, we don't see anything here. Let's go back to our editor. Save it. I don't think we saved this either. Okay, so let's go back here. As you can see, we have water. So props is water, and it is the 10 lakes, right? So that is that's the props. So props, remember, props are objects. So now you see this is one object. So this is one object, which is an array. So it's an array list of things. Okay, so to show you example of how props work, let me add one more thing. Let me add one more thing here. We could add another thing here. We could add something like location. Let's call it something like MN, right? Or let's call it Minnesota. And you will see that when we save it and go back to the console, you see that there's two things. There's two objects now. There's one object here and there's another object here called the location. So that's what props are basically. You could pass down anything. You could pass down a string, like we pass right now. You pass down an array. You could pass down numbers. So we could pass down a number as an example. We could just give it like, let's call it something like a zip code. And we have to give it in, let's call it 5612. Or area code of that one. Area code. Okay. And if we go back to our console, you see that there is a number called the 612, right? So you can pass down any type of data through props, which is very useful when you're trying to build an app. All right. Okay. Let us. Okay. So this is confusing. Okay, let's go back to here. Okay. So so now we passed our data. Let's get rid of this. And let's show the lakes here. So to show the lakes, there's two ways you could do. So two ways. So one way would be, let's say if you have multiple things, you could break them down here. So you could use destructuring. Destructuring usually is you say const and then use the curly bracket and then whatever inside the props like water, and here would be location. So these are the two ones in the props, and then you say equal to props. So now instead of saying inside here, instead of saying props dot water, you could just say water and then loop through that, right? So let's do that. So let me grab the example I had. Okay, so let's give here a better name and call it something like largest lakes in Minnesota. Okay, and let's use UL to list all the lakes, just a basic UL, right? And inside the UL, we're just gonna use map to map through the water. So we're gonna say water dot map, and then of course callback function Let's call it anything. Let's call a lake. Doesn't matter what you call it there. And inside here, we're just gonna return a li. So an li will be each lake. So that would be lake here. So what we did now is we mapped through the water, which was a list of all the lakes. And then we said, okay, return each lake in a new list. So if we save now and go back to the app, we should see a list of all the lakes, right? So in that sense now, so that one, we did that, and we could also just grab location if we want. And also we could nest another component inside the lakes. So remember that we talked about we need to know how to compose, how to put together components. Now we could create a new component. So let's call it something like a city or something like that. Let's create a component called city.js. Let's give it CRCF. And then here will be H2, the city. Okay. Now, if we go back here, we can send this location to city, right? So let's do that. Although that's not city, but let's pass it down. Okay. So to pass it down, we just say we import the component, which is city, and it automatically imports for me like that. And then as we did the same way we did in app.js, we do it here. So we say city is equal to location, right? And then we close that. Now, if we go to city, then city, we can bring in the props and check out the props this one has. Let's get rid of other console logs. Do we have other console logs here? No. So city now we can console log the props, right? So now it should show just Minnesota location. As you can see here, props are always object, and it's showing city Minnesota. That's a state, but whatever. And we could just show it here, so it's not a big deal. So we could just say, let's give it a paragraph. We don't have to loop over anything here. So we're just gonna say props dot city. And now that should show the city here. Right. So any question about how to pass a prop from one component to another, and how to nest components? So how to put together components. So we took lakes when we put it inside app.js, and then we take the city and we put it inside the lakes, and that's how we get to city. So that's the only way to get to city is through app.js, lakes, and then you get to city. So any question?
Ma'am,
Yeah.
I get two questions. First question, like this app lakes, you see what is this water.map?
Mhm.
Right? When
Yeah.
you're doing the map over, do we do it that way or do we do it like props.water?
You said the last part. What did you say? Do we do it that way and what?
Say hadda u qoran tahay ama loo qoraa or you're gonna bring state.map madam so had props.water.map.
Okay, so that's definitely important to understand. So we did the structuring. So if we didn't do the destructuring and we get rid of this, we get rid of that. Now instead of water, we have to say props.water. You have to say that. And remember that water is what we call the prop. So right here we call the water. You can name whatever you want here. So we can name it like view, and then save it, go back to lakes. Now we cannot call it water. We have to call it view here. And that's how we loop through it. So always remember that whatever name you call the props is what you either map in through it. And remember that you don't have to map through everything. So sometimes you might not have a data that you need to map over, but this one is a list of data. So we need to kind of map through it. If it's an array, you always have to map through. If it's an object, so let's say if these are just objects, then we could just point out the one we want. So we don't have to map over. So let's say this is an object, and each one of them has just like let's say it has like lake here, like that. We could just point to the key, which is the lake, and then it will just give us each one of them, right? So we don't have to do that. But now it's an array. So array, we have to always map through it. And then we just return each lake and give it li, and that's how we list it. But yeah, if we don't have to do the destruction all the time. You could just say props that whatever the props name is, and then dot map. Right? Hopefully that makes sense.
Okay. My other question is, like, if you go to the city app, city component here, let's say you want to return multiple things, like not one thing. And let's say, for example, we want to return like a shopping center or whatever, some other stuff. How do you do that? How do you show it mesh or JSX file?
So there's yeah, so that's why the destruction sometimes helps. It's because let's say you have multiple things. Let's say you have city, zip code, you have area code, you have like multiple things. So then you say const, and then here you say city, zip code, you say state, whatever, and then number, something like that, and then you say equal to props. Now you don't have to say each time, you don't have to say props. You could just say, let's say you have multiple ones here. You could just say city here and then zip code, right? Because now you basically breaking it down here. So this is called destruction. And then you could just call this state and number here. Of course, we don't have those because they're gonna throw an error except to the city. But this is how you could, you don't have to call props every time. Yeah, and that's why the destruction helps sometimes. But other times it's used also for like, let's say you have multiple, let's say city is an object or a array of objects of an array. And then this is just a number. So they're all different. Then you could use this to break it down. And then you could map over the city by itself, and then the other ones you could just show them. So that, sometimes it comes handy to use the destruction, but other times you could just call props everywhere if you want. So now if we get rid of this, these ones, since they are not part of anything, so this should work too. Oh, we have one location. So lakes, line 25. Location, city, called city, right? Location, and I'll go back to here. Do we have location? We have location. I'm not sure why it's giving me error. Unexpected use of location in lakes. All right. Oh, we got rid of the destruction. So we have to say here. Have to here props location. It's the exact thing we were just talking about. So save it, and it should work. See the same. Okay. Any question about how to pass props and how to nest the components together? So hopefully that makes sense. Props are not the easiest thing ever. they're kind of confusing, but all you need to understand is if you want to send the data to another component, use props, and this is how you use props. So this is the data, and this is the name of the data you pass in, and you have to pass it like this with the component you're trying to pass to, and then pass it like that. And then if you want to consume that, then you put props here, and then maybe let's actually write down some steps. Maybe that will help. So step one would be import the component you want to pass the data to. So step two would be pass the data as a prop, as props, like, and water, like water is equal to lakes, just like that. Okay, so when you do that, and then in here we're gonna say this would be step 3, I think, to consume the props, consume props first. Give this component props as an parameter. Okay, and step 4 would be console log props to see if you got your data. Okay, and then the last step would be step 5. Display whatever you see in the props. Remember, props are objects. Okay, so that is those are kind of like the steps. Maybe in case you forget, you could follow those steps, inshallah. Okay, any other question? All right, we will kind of make it short today. Let's go to the assignment. So the assignment would be most of you did this. So the React.js Instagram clone. So you're going to be creating the Instagram clone. Some of the things you need to understand about this assignment is you have to kind of read it. So read all the data, all the files inside the app. Make sure you understand how things are nested, or how you're expected to nest things, and make sure that you understand basically what the component is telling you. There's some comments in each component. So if you go to app.js, you will see that there's a lot of comment. Read those comments. This will help you to navigate. Basically, you're trying to import different things to here, different components. So like we just did, like posts, you're going to be importing posts. So most of you finished this assignment, but if you haven't finished all of it, go back to it and resubmit it again, because I have to grade it. So I'm going to be grading inshallah. So just to let you know that. And also, if I haven't graded something that we did in the past, that means you haven't submitted it. So just keep that in mind, and you will see that you're grading here. If you go to home and go to my progress, you see all your grading here. So if it says waiting for review, or it says not passed, it means, if it says for waiting for review, it means you haven't sent it. So you haven't sent anything yet, unless we haven't reached that. So if we didn't reach, that's fine. But if we pass that assignment, then that means I haven't seen it. And not passing means you didn't pass. So just keep in mind, like, make sure you submit these assignments. Just double check on that. All right. Any other question? Any question you guys have? Okay, I'll let you guys go.
No.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say no, we don't have. But are we gonna have a lecture on every other day, like one day homework, other day lecture?
We made it 2 days so that we can just make sure that you guys have time to do the assignments. So some people haven't finished, especially the React router and things like that. So we're just gonna keep it 2 days so we're not confused about anything. So let's keep it 2 days. So you have 2 days to finish this. That will be Tuesday and Wednesday. And then Thursday we can have new lecture, and then we're gonna keep going like that, inshallah. So you guys have enough time to do all this. And also you could do other examples. You could do other projects. You could watch videos to understand the concept really well. I think doing it again will help you a lot. It might be, if you already understand, it might be a little bit boring, but I think just pushing yourself, maybe using it for something else, will make sure that you never forget the props and passing components and all that stuff. Okay. All right, guys. Let me know if you have any question. We'll see you next time. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.
Alex.